Welcome to the live stream. Yay! So, my name is Michelle, aka the Ignited Teacher. And what I do on this channel, let me fix my sleeve first, is I provide math teachers like yourself or math educators, whatever you're calling yourselves, um, with evidence based teaching tips that can be implemented in your classroom as early as the next day. So that is my goal, not to make it so cumbersome that it's not useful. Because let's be honest, that's what they do at school, at work constantly. And yeah, make things real difficult. I saw this meme, and this is off topic because I happen to do that often, um, where they said that the teachers were burnout. So to address their burnout, they gave a 4-hour workshop on being burned out. Imagine that. So that's funny. But anyway, so if you're new here, in the comment section, whether you're watching it live or on the replay, drop where you're watching from and what you teach. Um, and if you're new again, I host workshops on my Crowdcast channel. I got hair shedding. And um, the next workshop that I'll be hosting, I was doing like introducing people weekly to the math intervention cycle, and I'll get back to that. But I am hosting a workshop on gap closing, what you are going to see today. Today is going to be an overview of those different types of gaps. But in my workshop, I'm going to go deeper in depth about these concepts and how they derail what you're trying to teach. Because far too often, it is not the on grade level concept that's the problem. It is always the concepts that you're not teaching that's the problem. So we're going to talk about that today. And I know I'll probably do another live stream before next week. And I'll drop the link. And if you're part of my on my email list, you'll get the link as well. It's a free workshop. In full transparency, I run two memberships, one called the Gap Closer, one called the Math Intervention Academy. And I'm going to be pitching those because in the day and age of attack on teachers, teachers need to get into some type of something outside of school because the curriculum, they're choking the life out of children and the teachers, and they're, especially if you're a young teacher and you want to stay in the profession, what they're teaching you unfortunately is not good. And the scripted curriculum, yeah, you won't be able to do anything or teach anything outside of what they're teaching you in that scripted curriculum. They're really not filling your toolbox with the necessary tools that you need to close gaps. That's just the honest to God truth. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started with um, today's topic. And the topic is the 4 hidden gaps that are ruining your math class. And honestly, just like children, teachers come in have different capacities. Meaning, for example, like me, I've been teaching 26 years, but here's the thing: I've taught many grade levels. I've taught elementary math, I've taught middle school math, I've been a math intervention, I've taught algebra 1, I've taught reading, I've taught science, I've taught social studies, I've taught all of it. So my lens is a lot wider than most. And a lot of teachers who have only taught one grade level struggle because they can't see beyond the content that they're teaching. But for math, we have to teach for the grade level beyond us, because coherence means that strand is connected. That's what we're looking at. And I find a lot of my students, when I'm teaching, they come with um, expired, for lack of a better term, strategies. And what that means, there's this article, it's an old article called the 13 rules that expire, but there are many rules that expire. For example, when you divide, you get a whole number. That's not true. It's only true until fourth grade. And in fifth grade, you start multiplying and dividing fractions. So we call that an expired strategy because you're only teaching for your grade level. I'm tutoring a student right now, and we just talked about that. When you divide by a fraction, you get a whole number. If the fraction comes first and the whole number is second. If the whole number's first and the fraction second, you get a fraction. So we should be teaching for the grade level vertical alignment, not for the horizontal alignment, meaning is at grade level where you're teaching. Because there's a teacher, just like me, I had to come behind those students and change that and grapple with that. And kids are like, no, but my teacher last year told me. No, that unfortunately, that's only for their grade level, and we as teachers should not have to be dealing with that. So let's start with the first gap. Well, I'm gonna give you all four of the gaps. So the first gap is the concept gap. The concept gap, students know the steps, but they don't know the why. That's the first gap. The second gap is prerequisite gap. Those are those skills that the students are supposed to know, but they don't know. And if you're working in an underserved community, in a school, because not all Title I schools kids are behind. Title I just means that they get, a lot of them are free and reduced lunch. And yeah, then the next gap is the procedure slash strategy gap. Students need a more reliable method. Now, I'm going to get into that because that is my jam. And the last one is important, and it pertains to our English language learners. The language representation gap. The word symbols or format are the real barrier. And that has to do with English language learners, but it also has to deal with students who are reading below grade level. Yeah, same children, same issue. So, the concept gap, and I'm just going to go through this, is yeah, when we're regrouping. If you're regrouping or trading and you're subtracting, or if the student says, I'm going to put a 1 there. Well, we know it's not a 1 because they're groups of 10, groups of 100, groups of 1,000, groups of 10,000. That's why I like those number discs. And if you look on my YouTube channel, I think I have some stuff on there that talks about that. But the students know the step, okay, procedurally, and that's why I call it an algorithm, because it is. Algorithms are just steps that happen over again, no rhyme or reason, but they don't know the conceptual part. NCTM, which is the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, says that if a student does not have the conceptual down, they cannot be mathematically proficient. So there's your concept gap. A lot of our gifted and talented kids have a concept gap. They do. The next one is the prerequisites gap. The prerequisite gap is a missing skill that's blocking the current learning. And this is most often what we see. Now, we do see the conceptual gap a lot, because a lot of our high school kids don't have the why, they just have the procedure. But the prerequisites gap is a huge issue. A lot of our students don't have or have not mastered the skills from the previous grade level. That's a prerequisite gap. And I'm about to turn it off. Okay. That's a prerequisite gap. And you have to go back to the concept. You have to address the concept issue to address the prerequisite gap, because in early grades, a lot of the skills are pictorial, or they're kinesthetic, or use manipulatives. So, though that concept gap and the prerequisite gap go hand in hand. Then the next gap is your procedure slash your strategy gap. Students need a more reliable method. Procedure meaning that they're making errors constantly over and over and over again. Those errors are there, and they need a different strategy. For example, when I taught division, I didn't teach division the same way to all my kids. I taught a form of division, and I know our curriculum or our pacing guide would always say, well, teach division for 2 weeks. No, ma'am. Division is a year-long process, because guess what? It takes the whole year for most of the kids to learn how to divide. Because guess what? They don't know how to multiply. And some of them are still struggling with subtraction. So there's three operations in division that can cause problems. So that is why it's a year-long process. I'm not a partial quotient teacher. Why? Because partial quotients teach to the student's weakness. And if I'm teaching division, I don't have time to keep honing in on place value, because the kids are struggling with place value too. I did not teach partial quotients. I know some people teach the box method. I'm fine with that, but that partial quotient, absolutely not. I am not a partial products teacher. It causes problems. And I know some teachers are going to swear by it, but it's just a strategy. That's a tool in your toolbox. But in today's scripted curriculum, there's no deviation from that. And you know that there are kids that need a different strategy because they don't get the procedure. And the last, but I think is an issue overall, is the language representation gap. The word symbol or formats are a real barrier for the kids. So this affects two groups of students: your English language learners and your students that are reading below grade level, the kids that are in special education, and those 504 kids, dyslexia kids. They struggle with this. And I have a problem solving method. Problem solving with redraw right. I adapted it from the redraw right strategy. At the time, it was not Eureka Math. It was the story of units from Engage New York, because I used to teach Common Core in Louisiana, and I adapted it to encompass reading supports for English language learners. And I'll drop that link if you're interested purchasing that. But that's a real issue. And as a math teacher, we are becoming a melting pot of people. And as people migrate, um, everybody's not going to be proficient in English, and it is our responsibility as teachers to address that. But it's also the district's responsibility to equip teachers with the skills to address it, but they're not. Instead, they're implementing Bible curriculum as if we're missionaries. But I digress. So, those are your four gaps: concept, prerequisite, procedures slash strategy, and language slash representation. Those are your four gaps. And these errors plague teachers constantly. And I know that a lot of you all are in the midst of test prep. You might want to look at these issues a lot closer as you're hammering out the issues, and the kids are still making those mistakes. And here's what I want to tell you: if your students are making mistakes, I'm not really concerned that it's test prep. You need to look closer. Sometimes you'll get more quality and the kid will end up passing if you just take the time to address those issues. Test prep is not about the most problems that you can have your kids practice. It's about a strategy. I don't know if I have anything on my YouTube channel about that. I did a workshop a while back highlighting how I roll out my test prep. I do a maintenance, review, and reteach. Um No, maintenance mini lesson, sorry. Maintenance mini lesson and reteach. Your maintenance skills are 70% or higher. Your review is 50, and that reteach is anything less than 50. And that's how we looked at our skills. And that's how I got my kids to pass. But I taught math too. I actually taught the math, and I had my small group instruction, and I had all those things. So it wasn't, when test prep time came, I wasn't still teaching and closing gaps. I was refining and pulling kids along. So it is a process. And if you find yourself in a crunch, and yeah, it might be too late for this year because it's April and you all start testing end of April, May. Maybe this summer I'm going to be offering some workshops and some other things. You might want to hop on that and invest in some support for yourself if you're not getting it at school. So that is, let me look, all I have for you all today. Let me see if this is going to pop up. And if you're interested in joining my Math Intervention Academy, I'm going to drop the link in the comment section because I'm only live streaming on YouTube. I have, like I said, I have the Math Intervention Academy, and I have the Gap Closer Academy, which is new. And it's basically just strategies for teaching different concepts. I'm going to go in actually this week to update and add some more content to it. I know a lot of secondary teachers are saying, well, you don't have secondary stuff. Well, it's based on the vertical alignment. And just like I said with these gaps, the gaps are generally not horizontally, meaning at grade level. The gaps, 9 times out of 10, which is 90% of the time, are in the prerequisite before the actual grade level. So I hope this didn't blow your mind. And thank you for spending these 20 to 30 minutes with me. And I will see you all in my next live stream. Bye bye.